Final Mass. Pope Francis thanks Synod participants, calling for a more merciful church. Final Report. What the Synod document says and what doesn't change. Catholic Relief. CRS does what it can to help migrants flooding into Europe from the Middle East. And Maria Goreti relics. Remains of the young saint on tour across the U.S. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Monday, October 26th, 2015. Good evening from Washington. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. Pope Francis closes the Synod on the Family, reminding pastors that faith must root itself in the life of the people. The Mass at St. Peter's Basilica wrapped up the Synod after Saturday's vote on the final report. Without changing church doctrine, the 275 Synod Fathers approved a 94-point final document. It endorses the Pope's call for a more merciful and less judgmental church. During Sunday's Mass, Francis reminded pastors of their duty to be bearers of God's mercy, especially in times of suffering and conflict.
Carissimi fratelli sinodali.
The Pope thanking participating bishops. He says they have shared the journey to bring the gospel to families today. The Synod's final document calls for the Church to be more welcoming and merciful. Ed Penton, Rome correspondent for the National Catholic Register, joins us from Rome. Ed, how does the final report compare with expectations?
I think generally, Brian, it's gone down very well. I think all the Synod Fathers that I've spoken to say it's been a very satisfactory document. It's come out much better than the Instrumentum Laboris upon which it was based, which was obviously, as viewers will know, was not very widely held and needed a lot of work done to it. This is the fruit of that, and it's the fruit of 3 weeks of discussions in small groups. But that's not to say there aren't concerns with it, and there are some serious concerns developing about the paragraphs on divorce and remarriage, which critics say can be open to interpretation, and the language is rather ambiguous or insufficient. So there's some concern there going forward.
So what happens now that the Synod has ended? This report's non-binding, right?
Yeah, well, now the report has always been really an advisory report. It's to be given to the Holy Father, who will receive it now, and now he'll deliberate on it. And then what we've heard today is that there probably will be an apostolic exhortation. That's come from the head of the Jesuits. He says there will be an apostolic exhortation, which is the final document, if you like, the Pope's sort of roundup of what he thinks is most important about what's happened over the past 3 weeks and the Synod before last year. So that document will come out probably, we think, probably in about a year's time, but maybe sooner than that. It could be only a few months. We'll just have to wait and see.
So, Ed, what did Pope Francis emphasize at the closing Mass? What is his takeaway message?
I think it's very much the message which he's been saying for quite a while now, which is to reach out to people who are in need, not to stay sort of within the confines of the church, but to go to the peripheries and meet those who are suffering and wounded and in need. He was referring to the gospel reading of Jesus' healing of Bartimaeus, who was the blind man whose faith healed him. And he compares him to the disciples who walked on, but Jesus stopped and healed him. And he's saying that as disciples of Jesus, it's important to listen to those and stop and help those who are in need. And not to sort of walk on the other side, but to follow Jesus and his example, basically.
All right, thank you. Ed Penton with the National Catholic Register joining us from Rome.
Thank you.
Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Faith and science come together at the Catholic University of America here in Washington today. Scientists, philosophers, and theologians discuss Pope Francis's encyclical on the environment. The conference is hosted by Catholic University and the U.S. bishops. Panelists say Laudato Si invites dialogue for people on all sides to discuss care for our common home. One of the moderators shares what she believes is the Pope's key message.
One of his key themes was how everything is interconnected, how our relationship with God, with each other, and with the created world can't be looked at in a vacuum. And it was really an invitation to look at all of that together.
Panelists hope this conference provides deep dialogue, not just quick reaction to that papal encyclical. There are new charges tonight against the driver accused of plowing into a crowd of people at Oklahoma State University's homecoming parade over the weekend. 25-year-old Adacia Chambers now faces 4 counts of second-degree murder. 3 adults and a toddler died in Saturday's crash. Nearly 50 other people were injured. Police suspect Chambers was driving under the influence. Her attorney disputes that. He says Chambers is suffering from an untreated mental illness. Overnight, the university community gathered in prayer, mourning those lost. Torrential rainfall smashes records in Texas. Some parts of the state are measuring water in feet, not inches. The Houston area pounded by more than a foot of rain over the weekend, closing busy highways. Much of the rain cleared by Sunday, and now the cleanup is underway. Those drenching storms were remnants of Hurricane Patricia. It roared ashore in Mexico Friday as a Category 5 superstorm with winds of up to 200 miles an hour. Joe Biden says he'll never run again for elected office. The vice president gave his first interview since announcing he won't run for president. That was last week. Catherine Zeltner reports tonight.
Vice President of the United States, it seems, will be the last elected office Joe Biden will ever hold.
Will you ever run for political office again?
No.
In an interview with CBS's 60 Minutes, Biden talked about the impact his son's death had on his decision to run. Reports that Beau Biden offered some sort of encouragement from his deathbed, the vice president says, are a bit overdone.
But there was not what is sort of made out as kind of this Hollywood-esque thing that at the last minute, Beau grabbed my hand and said, "Dad, you've got to run, like win one for the Gipper." It wasn't anything like that.
He says Beau always thought he should run and always thought he could win. Last week, Biden put an end to months of speculation that he would mount a presidential campaign.
Unfortunately, I believe we're out of time, the time necessary to mount a winning campaign for the nomination.
In the end, he says it just took him too long to decide, and the window eventually closed.
Dealing with the loss of Beau, any parent listening who's lost a child knows that you can't, it doesn't follow schedules of primaries and caucuses and contributors and the like.
Instead, Biden still wants to influence the Democratic Party to make sure it doesn't walk away, he says, from what he and President Barack Obama have done. Catherine Zeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Catherine. Turning to the Republicans, Donald Trump will not apologize for a comment he made about rival candidate Ben Carson's faith.
I'm Presbyterian. Boy, that's down the middle of the road, folks, in all fairness. I mean, Seventh-day Adventist, I don't know about. I just don't know about.
That comment came during a weekend campaign rally. Carson apologized last month for suggesting Trump's faith might not be genuine. But Trump says he will not retract his comment because he says he didn't mean anything bad. We have Gabby Marangiello, the political reporter for the Washington Examiner. What do you make of that comment from Trump and the way he made it?
I don't make much of it, and that I say that because it's certainly Donald Trump questioning Ben Carson's faith. It was done in bad taste. But this is a candidate who, in his presidential announcement, insulted millions of Hispanics. He has suggested that Carly Fiorina is not the most pleasant-looking female candidate, and yet he still celebrated recently his 100 consecutive days on the top of the Republican field. So these gaffes, these insults, they're not really doing much to bring down his campaign.
What do you make of that? Why are people so attracted to this guy?
Because he brings this truth, he brings this honest demeanor to the campaign trail that you don't see from these politicians who are constantly delivering calculated responses. And I think this is one of the reasons why Ben Carson is now rising in Iowa. He is delivering the same type of off-the-cuff remarks and the same speeches that Donald Trump is giving, but he's also backing up his remarks with substance. Ben Carson has policy that Donald Trump lacks.
And their style is so different between Carson and Trump. Who do you expect to rise to the top as the GOP gets together to debate again?
Well, look, I'll tell you who I think really needs to deliver a standout performance in the next debate, and that is Carly Fiorina. We have seen her drop recently a tremendous amount, and really a number of veteran campaign strategists look at her as this one-trick pony who can deliver these inimitable debate performances, but then falters when she goes out on the campaign trail afterwards. So she needs to step it up and perhaps emerge as the debate winner again in this third debate. And I think Carson, in order to really cement in his lead right now and perhaps over overtake Donald Trump as the overall frontrunner, will need to deliver a strong performance on Wednesday.
So there's still a lot of questions on the Republican side, but now that Biden has bowed out, do you think that Hillary Clinton is a shoo-in for that nomination?
Politics is so uncertain. There's so much uncertainty, So I hesitate to say whether or not she's the definitive Democratic nominee at this point. But I would say that Jim Webb and Lincoln Chafee, both exiting the race last week, certainly signaled that there's not much room in the Democratic field for candidates other than the former Secretary of State. And I think that Martin O'Malley and Bernie Sanders are beginning to realize that, and perhaps that's why they're not taking these opportunities to attack her and really undermine her credibility.
Is there any chance Biden will jump back in?
If something ends up, if there's a smoking gun with Benghazi or her email scandal, he didn't close the opportunity completely. So, I mean, there's, again, so much uncertainty in politics, and you never really know.
Keeps it exciting. Gabby Morangiello with the Washington Examiner. Thank you.
Thank you.
At least 180 deaths have now been reported as a result of a powerful earthquake shaking cities from Afghanistan to India. Afghan officials say the 7.5 magnitude quake was the strongest felt in recent years. Among the dead, 12 schoolgirls killed in a stampede trying to escape their school building in northern Afghanistan. The U.S. Geological Survey says the disaster is potentially widespread. It expects significant casualties. Refugees from Syria and other Middle Eastern countries are swarming into Europe. European Union leaders try to slow that flow. They pledged Sunday to strengthen Greece's borders and help the Balkans deal with the influx. They'll also expand shelters in Greece and the Balkans to house 100,000 more people. Germany says 15,000 migrants entered that country over the weekend. The refugees get help with food, water, shelter, education, even legal assistance through Catholic Relief Services. CRS has spent $110 million serving about 800,000 people. Those people suffering as the result of the Syrian crisis. Jason Calvi has more tonight.
Sean Callahan has worked for Catholic Relief Services for almost 3 decades. He's back home after visiting refugees in Serbia.
Sean, as you were visiting with these refugees, what went through your heart to hear their stories?
You know, it was really heartbreaking to see families who had not only lost family members, lost their homes and lost their jobs, but now had to abandon their country to find some safety and security. There were many of them frightened and had been traveling for 7 to 10 weeks. So, you know, I started thinking of what would it be like if I were in that situation, if these were my children.
Callahan says the stream of refugees is actually bringing Serbians together.
People were coming off the streets and hearing about the assistance that was needed and donating blankets and volunteering their time and making tea and coffee and welcoming people. And so Serbia has had a lot of violence and religious strife that has happened 20 years ago, but a lot of that remnants is still there. And it really seemed like this crisis, with this people coming together, many of whom had been refugees themselves during the Balkan War, were coming together, and it was kind of binding the country as opposed to tearing it apart.
CRS is asking the United States to take in more refugees.
Some people were concerned about security, that maybe a member of ISIS or another terrorist group can come in and come through the refugee process. What do you say to them?
You know, we find it highly unlikely, you know, as we've been talking with our European partners. In each case, as they cross the border, in many of the cases that we have seen, and in the areas where we're providing legal services, but these people have to register at the borders. They're providing fingerprints. They're also having their pictures taken. If this was a terrorist, there are many different ways they could get into Europe without going through such stringent border crossing each of the times and being located with a large group of other people because they're being bussed and then taken by government officials.
Now the question is, where will these refugees call home? Jason Calvi, EWTN News Nightly.
Coming up, Pope Francis enjoys a performance of traditional music and dance. And the latest Planned Parenthood video seems to contradict the congressional testimony of Cecile Richards. Today, October the 26th, is the feast of St. Alfred the Great. The 9th century British monarch, a scholar, preserved the growth of the church in England. Thanks for joining us this Monday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Nomadic Roma communities across Europe gather at the Vatican this morning to meet with Pope Francis. The private audience in Paul VI Hall featured traditional dances and songs. The meeting marks the 50th anniversary since the visit of Pope Paul VI to a Roma gypsy camp in Italy. Francis shared strong messages with the audiences, telling them, Your children have the right to go to school. Do not block them. The Holy Father called on the community to turn the page on its struggles with human and drug trafficking. A pro-abortion group wants Congress to investigate how another undercover Planned Parenthood video was leaked online. The video, released Thursday, features a Planned Parenthood representative. It sounds like she's saying Planned Parenthood can't stop affiliates from making money through the sale of aborted baby parts. The source, ScottNews.com, says the video was obtained from a source on Capitol Hill. David Daleiden, the man behind the undercover videos, recently turned over all the footage to the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. David Daleiden, the project lead, Center for Medical Progress, joining us by Skype from Orange County. How damaging is this latest video, David?
Well, I think it actually, if you watch what the Planned Parenthood representative, it appears to be Deborah Vanderhyde, who is the national director of Planned Parenthood's Consortium of Abortion Providers, which is a high-level committee at the national office that oversees abortion policy for the entire federation. And what she seems to be saying is that the national office can't actually control what Planned Parenthood affiliates do with regards to fetal tissue and money. And quote, if they want to sell fetal tissue in order to increase their revenue, there's actually nothing that Planned Parenthood National can do to stop them. And that runs directly contrary to the promises that Cecile Richards was making just a few weeks ago, that Planned Parenthood affiliates are no longer going to receive money for fetal tissue.
And I understand that you believe Democratic Planned Parenthood supporters in the House want the videos leaked. Explain that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The only people in Congress so far who have actually been calling for a release of all of the original unedited, or of all of the raw original recordings are actually Planned Parenthood supporters among the House Democrats. They've been very insistent that they believe that there's information or extra video that's somehow quote exculpatory is the phrase that they use. But based on the information that came out on Got News just a few days ago, it seems to me that they may not be using that word exculpatory correctly, because the information is only more damning.
So there's now a special committee in the House to investigate Planned Parenthood. What do you expect from that? What do you hope from that panel?
Sure. Well, if all that panel did was just examine the statements that Cecile Richards herself, the president of Planned Parenthood National, has made to Congress, has written in multiple letters to Congress, if they just drilled down on some of those admissions about the money that Planned Parenthood receives per specimen, that's per harvested baby body part, for the fetal tissue, statements about Planned Parenthood thinking that it's okay to adjust their abortion technique in order to get better fetal specimens, and statements that the national office has known about this for years and years and years and sees nothing wrong with it. If all the House panel did was just drill down on all those statements, get all of the documents, all of the witness testimony and expert testimony about those statements, they would construct a pretty good criminal case for the Justice Department in 2017 to investigate.
And at the Synod on the Family in Rome, there was a mention that the market for embryos, do you think your videos played a role in bringing awareness to this?
Certainly, I thought it was very conspicuous that the final report of the Synod to the Holy Father Pope Francis explicitly mentions the marketing of human embryos, which is an issue that nobody's really been talking about for 15 years until our videos were just released this summer.
David Daleiden, Center for Medical Progress. Thanks for joining us by Skype from Orange County. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, a cancer alert for processed meats from the World Health Organization. And relics of the Church's youngest saint inspire young Americans. This is EWTN News Nightly for October 26. Thanks for joining us on this Monday evening. New video reportedly shows last week's coalition raid on an ISIS compound in Iraq. U.S. Special Forces and Kurdish fighters were sent to rescue hostages believed to be in imminent danger of execution. U.S. officials say around 70 hostages were freed. A U.S. soldier, a member of the Army's elite Delta Force, was killed during the operation. He is the first American to die in combat in Iraq in nearly 4 years. His death raises questions about U.S. involvement in that fight against ISIS. At least 5 people are dead after a whale-watching boat capsizes off Canada's west coast. It happened near the town of Tofino Sunday. 27 people were on board the boat. Authorities say 21 were rescued. One person is still missing. No word yet on what caused the boat to sink. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada is investigating. The University of Mississippi has removed the state flag, which features the Confederate battle emblem, from campus. This comes just days after student senators vote to have that flag taken down. University police lowered the flag as campus opened this morning. The interim school chancellor acknowledges the flag represents tradition and honor to some, but some members of the Ole Miss family may feel not welcome or valued in its presence. Meat lovers, beware. A new study suggests processed meat can cause cancer. Also, red meat could be a contributing factor in developing cancer. The study, released by the World Health Organization's Cancer Group, it classifies processed meat as carcinogenic to humans with the potential to cause colon cancer. Meat industry groups blast this report. They call it biased and misleading. Ahead of the Holy Year of Mercy, starting in about 6 weeks, the relics of St. Maria Goreti are on a nationwide tour. Thousands flock to the different tour sites. Mark Irons joins the crowds for the Pilgrimage of Mercy in Virginia.
A packed parking lot as people keep coming, even missing school for this.
It's for a good reason.
The long line through the church stops at a glass case. Inside a wax statue are the skeletal remains of St. Maria Goreti, the youngest canonized saint.
It was a powerful moment. We always learned so much about her in school, and then to go and actually see her was amazing.
This scene in Virginia has already played out in more than 20 tour stops along the East Coast. Born in 1890, Maria was stabbed to death by a neighbor trying to rape her.
I think she just set a great example for us with her purity and always staying close to Christ.
Known as the patroness of purity, Maria forgave her attacker, who later reformed and turned to God.
Her mercy towards her murderer is a key that unlocks so many hearts. The fact that it came from a little girl is so disarming to people.
Father Carlos Martins is the director of this 55-day Pilgrimage of Mercy.
I've had almost every single day somebody come up to me who was either molested or who was raped and describe how they sense a new freedom following the visit to St. Maria and hearing her story.
And children are inspired by this young saint.
How much she loved God is just mind-boggling, how much we can take after that.
Paul Ozzie, who used to race motorcycles, helped Father Carlos prepare this van for the Relics tour.
We have taken the back seats out.
He then donated his souped-up RV and drives it from city to city on the tour.
It's beautiful. It's overwhelming. Can't compare that to motorcycles at all.
It's so cool seeing a saint.
Her witness is so Christ-like.
Father Carlos Martins says the veneration of St. Maria's relics has produced healings and miracles. The tour continues today and tomorrow in Georgia and finishes this week at sites in Florida. Over the weekend, the relics will be in Louisiana and then on to Texas. To stay up to date on the tour, visit mariagoreti.com, and there are already plans for a West Coast tour, Brian.
What an inspiring story. Thanks for bringing it to us, Mark. And thank you for watching. Until tomorrow, for the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. Tonight, we leave you with these images of Pope Francis, who had a really busy weekend. Good night. God bless you.